Welcome to our world. Won't you come on in? Waiting just for you. Welcome to our world.
I don't have any wit in me today. This
Okay.
is
We're just going through the motions.
I am witless.
Okay.
I got nothing.
I have a headache.
And my socks are on wrong. Okay. Well, I just figured that. Are you recording?
Yes,
Are you sure?
I think so. Yes. Look.
Okay.
Hello.
Well, because I just figured that we would maybe now try. Why are you
No,
laughing? I haven't
I'm
even
anxious to
said
hear what this is.
anything.
I'm anxious to hear what. I'm on the edge of my seat.
That we would re-record the lost podcast from 2 weeks ago or whatever, because we never actually.
What was that? What was it about? After the re-listen to it, I can't
You
because
can't.
it's not there. What was it about?
It was about immigration.
Just in general, immigration.
How do you not remember this? We had a whole 40-minute conversation. Why do you look confused right now?
I'm trying to remember specifically.
And this was your topic.
It was.
I didn't come up
correct.
with this.
I remember that part.
Okay.
I'm just trying to remember. No, I'm just trying to remember what triggered that, me wanting to do that, and how it started off. Like how we started it off.
The world may never know.
How did it begin?
I guess just what do you have to say about it now?
Well, since you asked. Okay. Let's do it. Well, let's start off like this, right?
Okay, great.
Because I do remember saying this. It was probably in the middle of that, the Lost podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, we have to separate legal immigration from illegal immigration. We have to, it's no different to me than saying, you have legal shoppers and illegal shoppers. Legal shoppers come in, they get their items, they go to the checkout, they pay the appropriate amount for the items that they've selected, then they walk out.
Sure.
Okay. Illegal shoppers come in, take what they want, and just leave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With no documentation because they don't have a receipt or anything, so they're undocumented shoppers, right? There's a difference, I think. And I'm kind of joking about this, but at one point, if someone had joked about the immigration thing, right? In other words, people would think, well, that would never happen,
What? Can I stop you here for a second?
No.
Because I have a question.
Ahead. Yes, please.
What makes you, because I was just thinking about a lot of things, right?
Uh-huh.
While you were, I was listening, but I was thinking
Why
while
am I
you were
the way
talking.
that I am?
I have asked you that before. I'll never get an answer, I don't think, because you don't self-reflect. What makes you so angry about this particular subject, or so passionate?
No,
I guess.
it's not just this. It could, if you notice, okay, and I'm very consistent with this. I'm angry about crime.
Well, so that's I guess kind of, I didn't want it to be a leading question, but because you just said it like that, I want to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
You're upset about this because you don't like when the rules are not followed, as we discussed on this before.
That's a very
so there are rules in place,
right?
And people are breaking the rules.
Right, there are rules in place.
And why should they be allowed to break the rules?
Absolutely,
is kind
absolutely.
of
like I agree. When people I just heard this last night or this morning, maybe both, that last year was the lowest birth rate in the history of the country. Okay. I think that's what they said. And so we need immigrants to be able to keep, basically, for the country to thrive, right? And even if we didn't, right? Obviously, we need immigrants, right? It's not a question of immigration versus no immigration. It's legal immigration versus illegal immigration.
Sure.
So it's the illegal side that just, it frustrates me that people are just okay with something that's clearly
Well,
illegal.
I guess that's okay. Because there's obviously, and there's probably a better way to say this, but you can look at illegal immigration in kind of a, I can't think of a better way to say this, like a quantitative way, like how you're looking at it, black and white, this is illegal. Or you can look at it in a more qualitative, nuanced gray area kind of way, right? Because part of the reason I asked you that was because I'm thinking about, well, are you angry that some of the illegal, undocumented immigrants, however you want to say it, that some of them that are here are committing crimes that are part of, gangs, or just not even part of gangs and just committing crimes, killing people? Does that bother you? Or is it literally just not that that wouldn't bother you, obviously that bothers you. I'm not suggesting it wouldn't.
Right.
But is your main issue with this just that it's illegal and it shouldn't be happening? Just to clarify.
I mean, the easy answer is to say both, but yes. And I think people who are oppose, I guess you would say, come out and oppose it, they usually, like Trump, right? He always talks about they're rapists, they're murderers, they're doing this and doing that, right?
Right.
And it's like, are a certain percentage of them? Well, obviously, yes, right? A certain percentage of any group is. And there may be, I'm not going to say there are, but there may be a higher percentage of them. I don't know. But it doesn't matter to me. In other words, yes, I'm mad because it's illegal, right? In other words, because to me it would be the same as someone's, driving their car and they wind up hitting someone and killing someone, right? They had a license or they didn't have a license, right? Let's say they were, quote unquote, an undocumented driver. Would it bother me more? Well, yeah, but not that the murder or that hitting someone is any worse, whether you have a license or don't have a license. But in that case, the point is they shouldn't have had a license in the first place, right? So either way, it's wrong. Okay, you can't drive. If you have a driver, maybe I should flip it. Okay, if you have someone who's driving without a license and they drive for years and years and they have no accidents and everything's fine, okay, it's not like, well, it was okay. Look, it was no problem. It's like, no, it wasn't okay. It wasn't
Sure,
a problem.
okay.
They still have to be licensed.
I don't disagree, but I feel like the way that you're talking about it completely takes out the human aspect of it, and humanity and empathy and any of that, when you just kind of, and I'm not, look, because I'm thinking about a lot of things as usual, because I'm thinking about when we first recorded this, how one of my main points was you can look at any country in the world, and I mean, from stuff that I've seen, maybe this is incorrect. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And if there's a country that just doesn't care who comes in and they just, I don't know. But from what I've seen, a lot of people have pointed out that countries around the world are stringent when it comes to people coming into their country. And they have a law. And if you come in correctly and the way that the system is designed, they welcome you. And if you don't, they kick you out.
Right.
That's my understanding of the way that at least most of the countries in the world operate.
Right.
Again, maybe that's incorrect, but that's what I have not done like extensive research, but from things that I've seen online, that is a point that a lot of people were making in this argument. But that being said, I feel like, so let's use the example, and I can't think of really a great specific analogy maybe that like exactly matches up to what you're talking about, because you're talking about driving without a license and all that. So I'm thinking of it more like, okay, because in that example you were also talking about an undocumented person without a license driving?
Oh, no,
or you were
I'm
just
not
talking
even
about
saying
someone
that. When
that
I
does?
say
Okay,
undocumented, I mean unlicensed.
they just don't
It's
have
the
a
same
license.
thing. It's the
Okay,
same thing. That's what I'm saying.
so let's say, you shouldn't be driving without a license, obviously, but let's say, I don't know, there's in a house you have. And I already know what the response is going to be. I can't think of a better analogy right off the top of my head, so I'm just trying to like get a throw something out there. Let's say you have a pregnant mother
Right.
goes into labor.
Right.
The only person in the house is her like 13-year-old daughter or something.
Right.
Nobody else is there. The neighbors aren't there. They live in an isolated area,
Right.
and I don't know, for whatever reason,
I
they
get what you're
didn't,
saying. So they
you know
have
what I
to,
mean,
yeah.
okay? So the options here are she has the baby in their house because she can't make it to the hospital,
Mhm.
or the 13-year-old daughter attempts to drive her to the hospital, who obviously does not have a license, right?
Right. Oh, this is, yeah.
What?
Yeah, go ahead.
What?
No, I picture a horrible accident and they're all dead.
Okay,
Which
so,
is
so maybe,
terrible.
all right, and obviously you could go a lot of different directions with
Right.
this.
Right.
But so my point is, in that situation, for the people in that scenario,
Mhm.
their best solution as they saw it was to have the 13-year-old drive the mother to the closest hospital,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Obviously, it's illegal.
Right.
We know this.
Right.
But had she, let's say for argument's sake, had she stayed and had the baby at the house, she would have died. The mother would have died
Right.
from complications that,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So this is illegal. This is illegal what's happening, the 13-year-old driving
Mhm.
without a license.
Mhm.
So for you, that should not have happened. It's
Well,
illegal. That should not have happened.
it
And
shouldn't.
you shouldn't do illegal things. And the mother should have just died in the house having the baby.
No, I'm not saying.
No,
Yeah.
but so
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying, because this is my whole point. When you, and not you as a person, but like in general, when we as a society take out the human aspect of these situations,
Right.
it's like in our heads, then we're just talking about numbers. We're not, or like, items or something. We're not talking about people. We're not thinking of it as
Right.
like someone like you or your sister or whoever, And I feel like that's a big, because I'm all for people coming into the country legally. The main issue is that we need a better system for people to come into the country
I agree with
legally,
that.
right?
And the thing is, I was going to say, with the example that you gave, I think the issue is you could take almost any criminal act and come up with a reason to justify it.
Sure.
Right? Shoplifting is an easy one, right? You could say, oh, the mother and has a young child and nothing to eat, and she's shoplifting baby formula. All right. I think the problem is, to me, what happens with that is it's not like the person doesn't get arrested. It's not like they don't stop her and they just say, well, it's okay, just go on your way. In that case, they would get arrested. They would go to court. The judge, she would explain what happened, and the judge would, I would guess, in that case, would be lenient because of it, and they would try to, help her or whatever. In the case of like the example that you gave, let's say a cop stops them, right? Now, I think the first thing the cop's going to do probably is get her in his car, rush to the hospital,
You would think, yes.
impound her vehicle.
Okay.
The
Anyway.
13-year-old's vehicle.
Sure.
Throw the 13-year-old in jail.
Yes.
No, but my point is, I think that's kind of what would happen. And I think it doesn't happen like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of times or millions of times a month. Well, not millions of times a month, but what am I, with the number of people that came across the border over the past 4 years, and really, I mean, over many years, right? The number of people just coming across the border like crazy. It's been nuts to me that the answer has been just to allow it and to do nothing. Because I agree with what you just said. We need a better system.
Well, yeah, that's the main thing. But I feel like, okay, because I didn't mention this when we first had this conversation, because I kind of forgot about it. And then after I was thinking about this, when I was at Villanova, one of the classes, like one of the electives that you could take was, and I I took this class. Actually, I don't even think it was an elective. I think maybe this class wasn't required, but you needed a course that was part of this whole thing. Anyway, long story short, I took it because my best friend was taking it.
Uh-huh.
And so we took it together. And it was called Option for the Poor. And it talked a lot about, I mean, you can imagine it's a class called Option for the Poor, right? So it's talking about, poor people in society and in not just this country, but all over the world. And a lot of things were talked about. But
I'm really curious about this course and what they, what you remember from it, I guess.
So there was a book, and I don't remember the name of the book, and I'm sure maybe if I looked it up, I could find it pretty easily. But it was about a young boy. I don't remember how old he was, but he was definitely not 16. He was under 16. I think he was closer to like 10 or something like that. Who, and I don't remember why, so this is really a very bad story that I'm telling right now. He wound up crossing the border, the southern border, into the United States alone. He did not have his parents, or he was with a group of people, but he didn't have his parents and all this stuff. I don't remember why. I don't remember any of it. And I don't even remember what happened to him at the end. So really, this is just an awful story that I could be telling. But I'm saying all of this to emphasize my point that in remembering that, and not just that the class, but that specific book that we had to read, that's what made me think more about like the empathy part of all of it. Because obviously that book itself was not, directed at people that feel, well, I mean, I shouldn't say it like that. It was someone that feels really strongly about people not crossing the border would read the back cover, like the summary of that book, and be like, yeah, like I'm going to read this like crap and all this stuff.
Because they would feel like this is, I use the word propaganda because it's used, but it comes off like that. It comes off like,
I don't think
pushing an agenda.
I don't think it came off like that at all. I want to make it clear. When I read the book, when I took that class, I did not feel that way about it at all. And my political and my societal views since then have not changed much. So I personally did not see it in any way as, quote unquote propaganda. I understand the point they're trying to make.
So what's your point with that, though?
Well, my point is just that again, to really emphasize that it's not, there's an empathy part of all of this that just gets lost in so many conversations, because I think, to be completely honest, it's easier for people to ignore that stuff so that they can have a conversation about just the general idea of immigration instead of actually trying. Because you're talking about like, okay, yeah, you're going to, if you do shoplift, you're going to go to court and maybe they'll be lenient if they explain. Ideally, yeah, that'd be nice. But also I feel like I don't want to say that's not going to happen, but you don't know if that's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen, right? It's my understanding that, we have these immigration courts and all this stuff that deal with this issue of people coming over illegally and, asking for asylum and all this stuff. And these courts themselves are extremely overloaded.
I just heard the stat on that last night.
Okay, tell me.
If this is right, I think they said there are 700 immigration judges, whatever they call them, for these courts. And there are millions of people that are in the pipeline.
Yes.
Right? So just do the math. It's most people wait 5 or 6 years for their hearing. So all somebody has to do is come across the border, say that they're seeking asylum, okay? Because the policy has been, you just release them. You basically assume everyone's telling the truth, okay?
So what are you supposed to do then? What is the solution?
Well, I guess part of the thing is, you need more judges. But you can't just cross the border wherever you want. You have to go through a port of entry.
No, I'm talking about, I'm not saying how the whole system should work in general. It needs to be completely overhauled. It's awful. I'm talking about when you cross the border legally, you come over, you run into customs or like border patrol, and you're caught and you say you're seeking asylum, and then they're like, well, we're going to let you go.
I'm not saying I think that there's not a better solution than this, But that remain in Mexico thing, I think, was a better solution because, in other words, you can apply for asylum, but you can't come in until we, and they should have for, I guess, just to be clear, we need some kind of a streamlined process for that, right? You can't say, well, you have to wait 5 or 6 or 7 years. That's crazy, right? But you should not be able to come in until your asylum application has been approved.
Right.
So, I mean, something like that. There have to be, if there are that many people applying, I think you need obviously more than 600 or 700 judges.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reason, though, so many people have been coming into the country is because everyone knows that that whole thing was a joke. It wasn't you. The people just didn't even have to show up. And I'm not. A lot of those people probably are good people. Probably they really were looking for a job and a better life and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, you don't know if even a small percentage of those people are, like they talk about, whether it's the gang members or things like that. It's crazy to me. I mean, you were really young when 9/11 happened,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea that because the big thing then was, how did this happen? How did these people get into this country? How did and since that time, not immediately after. I mean, after I feel like we were much more careful about who was coming into the country. But now, if someone's a terrorist, it was easy. I mean, ridiculously easy to come into the country. And I heard this just last night too. It's so easy to apply for Social Security number that I think it was hundreds of thousands of people who are not legal citizens have applied for Social Security numbers and have Social Security numbers because you need like 6 things, right? Like it's like a utility bill. You don't need. You would think it would be much harder. It's not. All of like the controls that should be in place for some of these things
Mm-hmm.
have not been in place at all.
That's kind of crazy. That you saying that reminded me of the thing from our other conversation where I had said I was listening to something and they were talking about how undocumented immigrants, the number of undocumented immigrants that pay taxes and all of this stuff, and then the one person on the show was like, how do they pay taxes if they're undocumented, and how do we know,
Right.
or not how do they pay taxes, how do we know they exist,
Right.
that this many people are paying taxes and contributing to Social Security and all this stuff if they're undocumented.
Right.
And I personally still don't understand that. If I'm being, I know undocumented does not actually mean like
that
we have no record of them,
right?
But
I think
how?
Well, I think it's a combination, right? So you have a lot of people that are getting paid under the table. Okay, so obviously in those cases you're not collecting any.
Yeah, but how are you
tax or anything.
contributing to?
Well, they're not then.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about the specific numbers where they are.
Well, and the next case is when people steal someone else's Social Security number, right? So they.
But then how do we still have information about them? That's what I'm saying. So then we don't actually have information about.
Really.
So what I'm talking about though is still the what they were talking about in the show, where the one person was arguing that for immigrants that are here illegally and saying they contribute to the economy, they contribute to Social Security, they pay taxes. A huge number of them are like, we have and I'm like, how are they paying? I don't understand.
And I had heard that and I believe I believe that even people that are here illegally, when it comes to Social Security, that overall they contribute more to the system than they take out, right?
Yeah.
So I think they do. Now, a lot of them are using invalid Social Security numbers, right? So it's not like, in those cases, not like they're necessarily ever going to benefit from that, but it's helping add money into the Social Security Trust Fund, right? People that apply for Social Security numbers and get them are also contributing, right? They're paying taxes and all of that. So I guess what I'm saying is, if people are not getting paid under the table, those people are paying taxes, right? And even the people that are getting paid under the table are still paying sales tax and stuff like that. So, that's the side that's the benefit. The problem is a lot of people that do apply for Social Security numbers and get the numbers maybe turn around and then they apply for Social Security disability, right?
Mhm.
And in that case, then they're drawing from the system. And I think what you said though is probably the biggest issue is we don't have a good record of all of this. I mean, the whole reason that you have like a port of entry in that is so you have a record of who's in the country and who's not. And yeah, you can vet people, but once people are here, you at least know how many people are here. I mean, like you would never just say we're going to have an open house at our house every day. Let's imagine when you guys were little, right? So we're a typical family. We have little young kids, and we're open house every day, and we're just going to let people come and stay with us, right? We have an extra room or two. We're going to let anyone just come and use those rooms. Maybe 99% of the time, the people would be good people, down on their luck. Maybe they just want to visit, whatever.
Yeah, I know. And I totally get this whole analogy, but then that's also not, because like I had asked you, your point is you just don't like the illegal part of it.
Yeah.
So the fact that, 99% of the people could be good people or whatever doesn't really matter in
It's
that
not
scenario.
that it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just, to me, it's one small piece of the whole puzzle. The fact that a percentage of the people are not good people. Because the other thing I heard, and I mentioned this on the Lost podcast, is that you'll hear stats, and these are probably true. You'll hear stats that say immigrants actually commit less crimes
Right.
than native-born citizens.
Right.
What they don't say is that if you notice what I just said, immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
right? I didn't separate legal from illegal.
Right.
So I think, and this is what I heard, legal immigrants commit much lower crime,
Yeah.
right?
I think
So they're lumping everything together,
Yeah,
and that's
and
not, that's a problem.
politics, honestly.
Right.
I think what it comes down to for me is no matter which side of this you land on or where on the spectrum you land on, the main thing that everybody should be able to agree on is that we need to fix the system, and we need to do it
Right.
quickly and
Right.
and like now,
Right.
like
And,
15 years ago, because it's like if you're on the side where you think no matter who comes through it's illegal and that's the end of it,
Mhm.
then we need a better system, because that does not satisfy your needs.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And if you're on the 100% side of, well, they're coming from a bad place and have a heart and all that stuff, well then let's fix the system so they can get through quicker.
Right.
Like wherever
Right.
you lie on the spectrum, the answer is to fix the system.
The problem is it's always as if they're two competing.
Well, that's what I'm
things, right?
saying.
Which
I
is
don't
not
understand.
correct.
You can have a conversation with each other about, because we had talked about this too. I do not. However you feel about getting quote unquote illegal immigrants out of the country, especially ones that supposedly are in gangs and committing crimes and all of this stuff, the way that the Trump administration is going about it, I had said this already, I think is distasteful to say the least. And I think it's inhumane, like the ASMR videos and the closing time video. I think people, again, people that are on the side of, well, it's illegal and they shouldn't be here anyway. Maybe those videos are funny for you. And if you're on the other side,
no, it's not funny. I
not
don't think
you.
it's
I'm not
funny.
talking about you.
For
I'm
some
saying for people that
yeah.
are all the way on that side of the spectrum. And if you're on the other side, you think it's horrendous and an absolute like whatever to humanity. But my point is that stuff like that is getting in the way of us, of like everybody actually coming together and finding a solution, because now you just have everybody fighting about that and whether or not
Right.
we should be posting those and how awful that is, instead of, oh, let's remember what the actual issue is.
Right.
And it's the broken
But
system.
I
It's
feel
not
like-
these stupid videos.
I feel like it's politics no matter what, and I feel like
I know, but like
that's probably not going to happen. I don't disagree with you, but if the people on those videos, first of all, I mean, the reason what I heard, and I think to me it makes sense. I don't think they were created to basically thumb their noses at people
I
that
think they
disagree with
were.
them. No, I think they were created to basically reduce people
Deter
trying to
future
come
criminals.
deter. Yeah. And just really quickly, I mean, here's the thing. The vast majority of people, well, I think it's the vast majority. I got to be careful about what I say, but many, many, many of the people that are coming across the southern border, these people are not at this point coming from Mexico. They're coming through Mexico,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They're coming from wherever. I mean, and a lot of it could be because it is an area or a country with really bad crime and they want to get out, or whatever, poverty. They can't find job. They can't get a job, right? But it's not like all these people from Mexico, right? Those people are already here, probably. You know what I mean? Most
well,
of them.
yeah, but yeah, I understand your point. It's not like when people are talking about quote unquote Mexicans coming over the border.
Right.
That's not the case.
It's
That's
not
not what we're
accurate.
talking about.
Yeah, it's not accurate. It's from Central America, Southern America, or even from different continents. You know.
Yeah. Anyway, this was fun. All right.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Do you have something else to say? I just feel
know.
like the main thing comes down to the system needs to be fixed, and I wish that you would hear more about that instead of, another video with a song that's supposed to keep people away. How about we just work on?
Yeah. It's what comes first, the chicken or the
system.
egg, and in this case, they can both happen at the same time.
Not efficiently, I don't think. I'm just saying I don't disagree that they could happen at the same time. I have not heard in the past 2 months, 3 months, I have not heard any news about, well, this is an update that we're proposing for the immigration system.
Yeah,
all I've seen are people getting kicked out of the country.
I mean, I've heard like maybe a remark here or there, but not a serious,
well,
like
that's
an
my
actual
point.
proposal.
And so
yeah.
maybe you could have both at the same time, but that's not what we have right now.
Some of the people who are most frustrated with illegal immigration are legal immigrants, right? So the people that came, and I'm talking about people that came over the past few years, right? And they're just so frustrated.
Yeah.
So it's not, I guess the thing is, there are some people who are racist. You're not going to change that, right? But this is not, for the most part, a racial issue. You have people that come from a country, they come in legally, and now they're mad because people are coming in illegally. So yeah, and if they fix the system, okay, if they fix the legal immigration system, there would be you wouldn't have as many people illegally crossing the border, obviously, right? Or if you can't illegally cross the border, it will create the need to fix the legal immigration system because you need the people. So when I say what comes first, the chicken or the egg, that's what I mean.
And it's fixing the legislation. Okay. Moving on to
This Week in History.
This Week in History. In 1965, bomb explodes outside U.S. Embassy in Saigon. Why did that happen?
It has no explanation.
Of course it does. I just didn't know if you knew.
No, I was 2 years old.
The embassy, I know about things that happened before I was born. I don't just know history that happened. Yeah, from the moment I was born, I could tell you anything that happened. But before that, who knows? All right, anyway. The embassy was virtually destroyed by a bomb that killed 19 Vietnamese, 2 Americans, and 1 Filipino. 183 others were injured. This was LBJ.
Vietnam War. Is this right around that time?
Yes. He refused retaliatory raids into northern Vietnam despite intense pressure to punish the communists. I thought that was going to be more eventful. I don't know.
Yeah.
In 1492, Jews are expelled from Spain for refusing to convert. Yeah.
Imagine that.
Most Spanish Jews chose exile rather than the renunciation of their religion and culture, and the Spanish economy suffered from the loss of an important portion of its population.
Think about that. Think about that a second. And the funny thing, at first I think, well, thank God things aren't like that now. But sometimes I feel like they're not too far from that. How much
Thank God. That's ironic.
Have things changed since the 1490s?
They have not. 1970, President Nixon signs legislation banning cigarette ads on TV and radio.
Yeah. I don't because obviously, so I was real little when they still had those on TV. I don't remember them being on TV, but they would have been.
Nixon, who was an avid pipe smoker, indulging in as many as 8 bowls a day, supported the legislation at the increasing insistence of public health advocates. I always wonder, though, and this is kind of along the lines because obviously, what's his name? RFK Jr.
Yeah.
talking about banning certain stuff like red dye 40 and all that. I always wonder where does, because we obviously have talked before about, our rights and all that and free speech and that. Where does this kind of stuff fall in there when the government says this is bad for you? And obviously we all know cigarettes are bad for us. That's not, I'm not suggesting it's like a conspiracy theory or something, but we know this is bad for you. And so the government's saying, not that you can't have it, but that you can't promote it.
Well, it's funny how the whole thing happened though, because it was a gradual thing, right? Like it started with the with putting on the side of cigarettes, the Surgeon General's warning, right? But there were still, back at that time, there were still a lot of people who still they just didn't believe it,
No, but so I'm saying, so what about?
So
what do you think about the? Like, where does it fall? Because if you tell me everything you know about something and we can all agree it's bad, does that mean you have the right? Because now I'm kind of more talking about RFK Jr. wanting to ban certain things like carcinogens and like.
Well, he wants to ban drug ads from TV, which
things that are yeah, but so I'm not talking about the ads themselves. I'm talking about specific things like red dye 40 that he like would be banned, right? Should that be allowed? We know that something's bad for us, but does our government have the right to say this is bad for you, so you can't have it?
I don't think so, because they could. I mean, I think it's more like where do you draw the line, right?
And I'm asking you.
Well, like they say, like sugar. Oh, you shouldn't have too much sugar. So, do they get to a point where they just completely ban it in all drinks? I don't.
So you don't have an issue.
I'm very hesitant to have too much.
I know you do. That's why I'm asking. So you don't have an issue with them saying you can't promote these products. It's just that we should still be able to get the products. You just shouldn't be able to promote them.
I think it depends on the product. Because like if you say, well, we all agree that this is bad. Well, like I don't have a chemistry set that I can't on my own do a study to see, is red dye 40 really bad for you? Does it really kill people?
No,
Does it really cause cancer?
I'm not talking about you actually doing your own research.
No, but I'm saying, so how do you really know? So in other words, you're trusting the government to a certain extent.
Well, it's not always. I mean, I'm not even talking about specifically. Obviously, I guess in that case, it's from the government where that like the actual study was done or in research and all that. But I'm talking about in general, even when like the random studies come out, like there was, I don't think this was a government one, a couple of months ago where they said about wine being like bad for you, and people used to say that a glass of wine a day was good for heart health and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And now there was something a couple months ago that said like, no, it's also contributing to cancer. So it's like, is
I didn't
that
even hear that one?
I don't know. Whatever. This is a whole conversation maybe. Anyway, next. 1972, Charlie Chaplin prepares for return to United States after 2 decades. Why was he gone? Do you know?
No, I don't even know when
you were
died.
alive during this time, so you should know.
I should.
He left in 1952 when he was denied a re-entry visa amid questions about his leftist politics.
Wow. I'm surprised I never heard about this.
Chaplin moved with his family to Switzerland and never made another American film. But in 1972, the 82-year-old Chaplin finally returned to the United States to accept an honorary Academy Award.
Wow.
That's very interesting.
I never knew that.
Of course not.
Okay.
Checks out, though. Free speech.
No, that's funny.
2017.
So he was, the funny thing, so he must have been born about 1890. It's just weird because I think of, right, my grandmother,
Oh, no.
who was born in 1895.
Maybe she knew him.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Maybe she met him.
Okay.
2017. Egyptian officials announced the discovery of pyramid remains. That's exciting. Dating back around 3,700 years, not 37,000.
3,700. That
As
sounds
a prior page would make me believe.
Yep.
It's exciting. All right, we all know about pyramids. 1776, George Washington begins march to New York. Hoo-hoo.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I love how it says General George Washington and his underpaid army.
Okay.
Talk about propaganda. What do you mean? The Congress's inability to pay or adequately equip its troops eventually resulted in the granting of Western land as repayment for military service, a practice that helped populate the West. Again, wild
See, that's
considering
cool.
we did not own that land, but that's fine.
Nobody owned the land. Let's be clear. Nobody owned the land. Okay.
I'm not.
Just,
We're not.
I know
we're not
doing
having
a
this
whole thing on
conversation.
this.
I'm not responding.
No, I know we're not doing a whole thing on this, but it's not like there were 300 million people here and they were all native, and then all of a sudden, we're talking about huge swaths of land that were largely unpopulated. That's the end of my.
Okay.
Hold
great.
on, let me get down off my soapbox.
We still didn't own it. Next, 1950.
No one did.
1950. Yes, because the Native Americans did not believe in owning land. 1950. They did not. Franklin Chang Diaz, the first Hispanic American astronaut, is born. With little money and no knowledge of the English language, he moved to the United States in 1968 and enrolled in a community high school as a senior to learn English before attending the University of Connecticut on scholarship, and later earned a PhD from MIT.
Wow. Did he enter the country
Amazing.
legally?
I knew you were going to say that. Moving on.
But then, okay, so he entered the country. We're assuming he entered the country legal. And he learned English.
Listener feedback, yeah.
Listener feedback, yeah. Okay. Someone commented, Zanzibar is one of my favorite Billy Joel songs. That is correct.
Would you like to sing it?
No.
Okay.
But it is a good one. You should all go listen. I honestly, which I feel like now I have probably sung a Billy Joel song on here before, I have such an issue with people singing Billy Joel songs because no one can do them justice. I have heard people, many different attempts at covers of Billy Joel songs. You just can't. It just can't happen. I don't know how to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And then people, you know what really bothers me about them? We're just going to take a quick detour to the airing of grievances, and then we'll come right back. What really bothers me about it is when people try to, because, singers try to make songs their own and do like their own riffs and all that.
I hate that.
Not on a Billy Joel song, you don't.
No.
You do not. He has sung those songs perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Every riff, every note is as it should be. Do not try to make it your own. It's not yours.
You know the funny thing?
It never will be.
I think 99% of the time when someone does that, the original is better. 1% of the time, a remake of a song is better, but it's because they didn't go and change it up. They just performed it better.
They performed it. Which I don't know if she's done a Billy Joel song. Potentially the only exception to this, which I'm not saying it is because I don't know that she has. Kelly Clarkson on her show, she has a segment where she does karaoke.
Okay.
And every cover that she does, it's so much better than the original. So much better.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting she would be better than Billy Joel because she wouldn't, but maybe she would be okay and it wouldn't.
I should watch one because I haven't seen.
She's so good.
Any, yeah.
She just sings so effortlessly, and it's just anyway. All right.
Yeah.
Jim saying he has some really old shirts, possibly Fruit of the Loom, right after he accidentally claimed he was alive in 1865. Missed opportunity for Samantha to say that he probably predates the loom itself, haha, or fruit. I Was that? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was funny, I
I
guess.
still haven't checked to see on some of my older shirts. I gotta look. Remind me, as soon as we're finished, I have to check.
I'm gonna go get lunch after this, so
Notice
I'm
I
not
said finished.
proud of you. Someone else responded, and this was about when we were talking about teachers still.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha, I could definitely put more time into my job, but most people, this is a teacher, I'm assuming. But most people are just terribly inefficient, and that's why they do work at home and all. I work through my free periods, through my lunch. I'll stay after school if I have to, but I don't just go around socializing like everyone else does. And then they complain that they don't have enough time. And I use good resources that save me time and everything else. So yeah, some people who put a bunch of time in are really going above and beyond, but many are just bad at managing their time and being productive during the workday.
Yeah.
No. At least this person's not
that's
bitter
true.
at all.
You can't argue with any of that.
Hold on. I'm actually going to look this up really quickly because someone else commented the correct way to pronounce the word that I could not pronounce last week. And I didn't actually listen to it. The comment literally has a screenshot of this word pronunciation and it says P.S. Samantha. So I'm just going to look this up really quickly and play it for all of us. Appomattox. Hold on.
Appomattox.
Where I was over here like, Appomattox. Okay. It's Appomattox. It's a town in Virginia. Thank you so much, everyone, for pointing out my flaws. It's my favorite thing. Okay. I do love being corrected. I'm going to genuinely, constructive criticism is one of my favorite things. And now we know. Appomattox. It's kind of fun to say, especially when I do the little head thing.
Yeah.
Moving on to...
If you have grievances, and I'm sure you have.
The airing of grievances. I've grieved a little bit, so do you have any grievance? Oh, actually, I think I have a list of some of your grievances. Go ahead.
I have one.
What?
This is one just popped in my head. I hate it when you're driving, especially at night, but it doesn't have to be only at night. And someone tailgates you.
Sure.
And I mean, it bothers me. Bad drivers bother me anyway. Somebody that, then passes where it's no passing zone or whatever. But that actually bothers me less than the person who just naturally wants to be right on your bumper because they get to a point where they could pass, but they don't. They just
stay there.
Right there. It's like, because it's the most distracting thing. You shouldn't do it, but everyone does. You're looking at what's in front of you, but then you keep checking your mirror to see if this person hit you yet. Because you're pretty much waiting for it. You are. Right?
Yep.
So that's
every time you take your foot off the gas or you have to hit the brake a little bit and you're like, well, this is it.
Yep.
This is how I die.
And sometimes I keep my foot on the gas and then tap the brake so they think I'm stopping.
That's called a brake check, and we do not recommend that. We do not recommend that.
That's what I do. The one time the person behind me went through the windshield.
Been proven.
It's great though to see that in the mirror, see the person flying through their windshield. But then you got to make sure you step on the gas so they don't hit your car, not their car, but the actual person that's flying now through their windshield, and you don't want them like bloody person laying on your trunk.
So you know what bothers me?
What?
What bothers me has nothing to do with that. I've moved on. I moved on 2 minutes ago. So when people are on their phones a lot in public, like, let me think of a good example. I don't know. If you're at a restaurant,
Life.
You shouldn't, if you're with someone, you shouldn't be on your phone a lot. Like, are you not there to enjoy the other person's time? If you need to go on your phone for a second, that's different. But like when I'm out and I just see groups of people or a couple and everyone's just on their phones the whole time, it's like, why are you even here? You could have done the same thing and just like been at home. But you know what bothers me more?
What?
What bothers me more is when people are like, yeah, phones have ruined everything. We used to have social connections back in my day. Because let me tell you, maybe that's true. I don't know. Maybe you did. But you make it like you didn't have other distractions before phones, as though books didn't exist or newspapers or other things that you could be doing instead of I'm just saying, the scenarios exist. Phones make it worse. Whatever.
It makes it exponentially worse.
I completely agree.
Right.
But to suggest that back in my day, we actually, talked when we were sitting waiting for the bus with strangers. No, you didn't. You
I
brought
didn't.
a book, you brought a newspaper,
Well,
you
no.
sat there, or you stared at the sky.
I stared awkwardly at the person because I'm bad at social interaction. So I just sort of stared at them and nodded my head. I'm waiting for them to either ask a question or say something. You know, I wasn't even good at like talking about the weather. I wasn't, you know, I
think it's nice to.
I would usually just get up and leave.
I think it's nice, and I try consciously to do this when I'm out in public, to not be on my phone as much.
That's good.
And to actually I'm not even talking about when I'm with someone. I'm not even talking about when I'm with myself.
Right.
To just observe and to take in like nature and where I am and all that stuff. Because I feel like we just become so like the world is not. It's like it feels fake. I don't even know how.
Yeah. Well, be honest though. If you don't, I think that's awesome, and I think more people should do that. But if you are somewhere, let's say you're going somewhere, and it involves taking a train by yourself or a plane or whatever.
Sure.
And you're standing in a lobby. Now imagine for a moment you don't have anything. You don't have your phone. You don't have a book. You don't have. All you can do is sort of look around.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you? I would feel like, crap, I can't believe I forgot my phone. That would be bad anyway. But I would feel like that's your out. That's
what we call
last resort.
That's what we
escape
call
valve.
a crutch, my friend.
Yeah, right.
It's not good. It's not good to have those.
If you had a crutch, you could walk around with your crutch.
I'm going to go eat lunch. Goodbye, everyone.
Crutch. Here's my crutch. Okay. Look at me with my crutch.
That's enough.
With my crutch. Hold on, I gotta stop. Kind of a mess in here.
Messaging up.
The police. Go ahead.
If there was a song, you would have been disappointed. I was going to say you would have been proud of me because when I was on my break the other day at work, the person I was sitting with, song after song, I would like cut him off to say, "Oh, do you know who sings this?" And every time he didn't know, and I knew, and he was like, "How? Like you just made that up?" And I would do like the Shazam, like, I know. But the one I did not get was some song by the Talking Heads. And I was so disappointed because as I'm listening, it didn't even sound familiar to me, like the song itself. But as I'm listening, I'm like, I know this band. And I'm telling you right now, this song is from the 80s, the early 80s. And he's like, no, I obviously know that one. It wasn't like a, maybe it was a famous, actually.
When I think of it, that's the first one that pops into my head.
Anyway.
Into my talking head.
I didn't get it. I had, but it was from 1980.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Great.